I'm sure you have all seen at least the podcast or the clips of Charlie Kirk and Gavin Newsom on Gavin Newsom's new podcast, to which they decided to talk about girls' sports. So let's dive into what was said and what this really means and where Governor Newsom actually stands. If you have been following along on the podcast or on my social media, you would know I have a huge heart for protecting girls' sports and absolutely believe girls' sports should be protected. And so I felt the need to kind of talk about what was said on Gavin Newsom's podcast when he had Charlie Kirk on and they talked about girls' sports. I have seen on social media a lot of debate from both sides on Gavin Newsom saying this. I have seen Democrats mad at him. I've seen Republicans mad at Charlie Kirk. It is just all over the place, and I wanted you guys to hear from me and what I have to think about this as a Californian, who pays attention to legislation, specifically on the women's issue, as a former collegiate athlete. I thought it was really interesting when my governor said this. So let's just check out the clip of what they had to say, and then we'll dive into it.
It's like you right now should come out and be like, you know what? The young man who's about to win the state championship in the long jump in female sports, right. that shouldn't happen. You as the governor should step out and say no.
No, and I appreciate.
But like, would you do something like that? Would you say no men in female sports?
Well, I think it's an issue of fairness. I completely agree with you on that. So that's easy to call out, the unfairness of that. There's also a humility and a grace, that these poor people are more likely to commit suicide, have anxiety and depression. And the way that people talk down to vulnerable communities is an issue that I have a hard time with as well. So both things I can hold in my hand. How can we address this issue with the kind of decency that I think, is inherent in you, but not always expressed?
Okay, before we dive into what was said, what they all meant, what I have to think about it, I just want to clarify that it is extremely clear that Governor Gavin Newsom wants to run for president in 2028. I mean, we thought he wanted to run for president for this last election. We were not sure if that was going to happen. He is willing to say whatever and do whatever to become president of the United States, to push his political power. And so, no, I do not believe Gavin Newsom is now a moderate. He is extreme as extreme gets. And so, yes, he went on this podcast of his and said it's about fairness because he knows it's common sense to say that, because he knows the last election really swayed because of this issue of men and girls' sports and girls' spaces. And he can say this all he wants, but we're going to continue to watch his actions and make sure the rest of the nation knows that he is not moderate and he has done nothing to save or protect girls' sports. And so, yes, he said it is about fairness. I completely agree. Girls are losing out on fair opportunities because of boys and girls' sports. And so I agree with that statement. But again, he needs to actually put action to his words. We have to watch what he does, not just what he says. He is a politician. Truthfully, I think he's grimy. I think he's manipulative. And again, he will say whatever to climb the political ladder. And so I also want to touch on the fact that he said it's about fairness because he mentioned his wife played collegiate soccer. He has 2 daughters. Anyone that has any amount of common sense can see how unfair it is to allow boys and girls sports. But again, the bills he has signed into law differ from this. What he's doing differs from what he's actually saying. But before we get into that, I do want to touch on the fact that he said where his hands are tied is because suicide rates and mental health issues of the boys that are confused in girls' sports are spiking. And I just want to give you guys this stat from the American Urological Association found in California from 2012 to 2018 that literally shows that suicide rate attempts were twice as high after vaginoplasty or phalloplasty as before. So suicide rates were twice as high post trying to transition your body. Again, you can't transition your body, but post undergoing these surgeries. And so Dr. Laura Edwards-Leeper, she was actually the pediatric gender affirming care surgeon who brought the Dutch protocol, so like this affirming protocol from the Netherlands to the US. And she states, as far as I know, there are no studies that say if we don't start these kids immediately on hormones when they say they want them, they are going to commit suicide. So the stats and facts actually show that allowing these kids to try to sterilize and mutilate their bodies isn't going to help with their mental health problems, isn't going to help with suicide. And in fact, it actually increases it. But I also want to note that, yes, a lot of these boys that are in girls' sports, when you see it at the younger level, a lot of them are confused. They are going through mental health issues, and they are being affirmed lies by the grown adults around them that are allowing this to happen. And the best way to love and support these boys are not to affirm the lies, to let them know that they were created as a male, that you cannot change your sex, that there was no mistake made when they were made by God. And affirming these lies is not going to help these boys, and it continues to put girls at risk. And so boys, we know boys are bigger and stronger and faster than girls majority of the time. And so that's where we see these issues of girls being injured, such as Peyton McNabb, of girls losing their opportunities. We are seeing that with the long jump here in California. We're seeing that in Riverside, in cross country in California. And so these issues are happening, and boys should be using their strength to protect girls, not to victimize them, not to take away their opportunities. And so what has Governor Newsom actually done to protect girls' sports? Nothing. And he wasn't the governor that signed AB 1266 into California law. We've talked about that a lot on this podcast. Again, that is the law from 2013 that went into effect in 2014 in the state of California. It was signed into law by Governor Jerry Brown. And that was the law that said you can play on sports teams and use restrooms and facilities based on not your sex, but based on your gender identity. So again, Governor Newsom did not sign that bill into law. Yet we can see here from 2014 on his Twitter, he posted, and if you're just listening, you can't see it on the screen. If you want to head to YouTube or X or Facebook to watch it, you can. But it says, in case you missed it, and this is a Gavin Newsom tweet, transgender students will not have to worry if their rights will be repealed this November. Hashtag AB 1266. So in 2014, Governor Newsom was obviously okay with AB 1266, okay with boys being in girls' sports and all of that. And we're not saying that people cannot change their opinion and their point of view and belief over time. I mean, this is 11 years ago, but he has done nothing to prove that he actually has changed that point, except for the fact that he has woken up and recognized that this is not a common sense idea to allow boys and girls sports. It's common sense to not allow boys and girls sports. He woke up and realized that a New York Times polling recently found that 79% of Americans believe that girls sports should be for girls sports only. He's looking at the stats and trying to do whatever he can to line himself up for a presidential win. And again, pay attention to actions, not words. And so we also know that Governor Gavin Newsom doesn't care about girls' fairness or safety, because he did sign into law SB 132 by Senator Scott Wiener in 2020. This bill, SB 132, allows males to go into female prisons, again, based off of gender identity, not biological sex. So we're now seeing that issue pop up, that males are inmates in female prisons. We are seeing women are being pregnant. We are seeing they're teaching women how to get abortions and birth control and all of that in women's prisons right now, because they are being molested and raped by these male inmates. Senator Scott Wiener signed that bill into law in 2020. Where's the fairness for women in that? Where's the safety for women in that? Exactly, there's not. He also, when this executive order recently came out in January by President Trump that said he is going to protect female sports and female sports are for females only, we saw California was one of the states right after to say we're not going to follow that. CIF, which oversees California high school sports, said we are not going to follow Trump's executive order to save girls' sports. Guess who would have been the perfect person to step in and say, come on, California, we are going to follow this executive order and we're going to save girls' sports? The governor. What did the governor do? Nothing. He did absolutely nothing. So his actions and words do not align. Do not fall for his deceit. He is not a moderate. I think it's good he's having some of these conversations, as long as we continue to remind people the conversations where he's having these Republicans and these conservatives and these Christians on his show isn't because he's moderate. It's because he's trying to trick people that he's moderate and trying to line himself up for a presidential run. But if you listen to the whole podcast, at the end of the day, Charlie Kirk really did prove him wrong on a lot of things. was able to discuss some California legislation that Newsom didn't even know how it worked, and maybe he did, and again, just wants to lie that he knows how it works. They were able to talk about the issue of pornography in children's schools and children's books. He was the first person that we've actually seen been able to ask Newsom to his face the question of girls' sports. And so at the end of the day, Newsom did not come out looking great. If people are believing that he is a moderate, if people are believing that he's actually trying to protect girls' sports, then we have an issue of low IQ people, not people that aren't looking up the truth, people that aren't looking up the facts. And so we are going to continue to make sure that people are aware of what's happening, because guess what? Here right now in the state of California, we have 2 Save Girls Sports introduced. Assemblywoman Kate Sanchez introduced AB 89, and Assemblymember Bill Asaley introduced AB 844. Both these bills would save and protect girls' sports. Assemblymember Bill Asaley's is a more in-depth bill overall, basically undoing AB 1266 from over 10 years ago. And this would basically say that you have to use the restrooms, locker room, sports teams in school situations based off of your sex, and that's it. Where Assemblywoman Kate Sanchez's is undoing basically high school sports only. And so both of these bills at the end of the day are great steps forward to save girls' sports and to protect girls' sports. Guess who has said nothing about these bills? Governor Gavin Newsom. These bills haven't been scheduled a hearing yet as of right now. Guess who can have an influence to say, get these bills in committee hearings. Let's get these bills scheduled and let's get a bipartisan support passing this legislation. Governor Gavin Newsom. He hasn't done that. And so we need to now use his own words against him. We need to remind the Democrats in California legislature when they're voting on AB 89 and AB 844, if they even give these 2 bills a hearing, that they should be voting yes on these bills, because as Governor Gavin Newsom said, it is about fairness. And so, yes, I understand why some people are upset that he did this. Some people are upset that he said it. But at the end of the day, he is running for president. He wants to be running for president. He literally will do anything possible to climb the political ladder. He'll say anything possible to climb the political ladder. And as he continues to do these podcasts and say things, we'll hold the line, we'll call him out, and we'll keep him accountable. And for now, we'll use his own words against him to save girls' sports.